A voice smoother than gold and skin harder than diamonds. It's the Rock and Roll Coup d'etat with Eddie Winters.
Oh, yes, my name's Eddie Winters. We are back. We've got a very special guest on the line. He is the founding member of the legendary group Wishbone Ash. They're celebrating the 50th anniversary right now as we speak. I want to welcome Andy Powell. Andy, how you doing this morning?
Hey, Eddie, good to be with you. Yeah, we're doing great. We just played Vegas last night, and we're en route to California. We're at the end of a long journey, which is about 8 or 9 countries we've been touring in. So, but we're feeling good. Everyone's in good spirits.
That is great to hear. You're going to be in the San Francisco Bay Area performing a few shows, starting at Yoshi's in Oakland on the 25th, and then you're going to be in Redwood City on the 26th, and, of course, in Sacramento on the 27th. And it looks like you've got a jam-packed schedule here. And also you're celebrating 50 years of the group, and you got a brand new box set that's out. How has this been? Did you think ever that you'd be doing this for 50 years?
Yes, indeed. I mean, yeah, I had no idea. I mean, I think most people that were in bands in the early 70s maybe perhaps gave it 5 years. But I think that what was amazing is that the bands that were formed, especially in Britain at that time, they became great brands in their own right, and they also laid down fantastically original music. And because you had to be an individual sounding band, and so I think it's just stood the test of time. And it's the progressive rock era has influenced so much of modern rock music, and the fans have just kept right along with us. They're along for the ride, and that's just absolutely awesome. So I feel pretty privileged by that,
Well, and as this is your 50th anniversary, are you guys celebrating that in the show? Are you doing something special for these shows in particular? Are you pulling from different parts of the catalog? How do you put the show together?
Well, we're not quite at the 50 yet, but we're heading up towards it. I mean, basically what we do is our most recent album is an album called Blue Horizon, so we feature some material from that. Of course, we feature the classics, and we try and it's only just under a 2-hour show, so we have a vast catalog. So every tour we vary the selection, but we'll certainly be playing some highlights from the career, from the deep catalog in the shows that you mentioned. The big thing that's going in tandem with these tours is the release of a vintage box set, a deluxe vintage box. It's called the Vintage Years, and that features the first 30 years of the band.
Right.
And it's a 30 CD historical release and a limited edition, and that's just literally coming out, I think, today. So cool, a good time.
It's quite an impressive package, by the way. I mean, this was if I read this correctly, it was a 3.5-year project to put the Vintage Years box set together. Tell me a little bit. How did you kind of wrangle that? I mean, going through the archives and finding live shows, and obviously it's the albums as well. Give me an idea of what kind of task that was to put that together.
Well, it was monumental, but it was helped in some way because I'd done a book a couple of years earlier where I'd had to sort out all the archiving and the events that took place, and so that helped me a lot. So I'd already culled quite a lot of the photographic material, which was in various storage places around the planet, and so I collated a lot of it, and then a lot of the live tapes, between the various band members, the original band members, we'd kept them safe, and the only thing was that technically speaking, we had to transfer from the old 24-track 2-inch tape to a digital format, and that requires some gentle handling because you can imagine the magnetic oxide, it can get a bit crumbly. So you have to do what's called baking the tape. So all of that stuff was carefully done, and then of course you've got to remaster and reproduce, and because it's such a big package, you have to. The remastering is quite important because over the decades, the sound of these records changed. So you have to come up with a mean average of the sound, so that if a listener is opening that box set, going through the CDs, that things sound consistent on their player. So it's quite a technical challenge, but we rose to it, and thankfully, various band members, myself primarily, kept a lot of the historical information that went into the box set. So that was very fortuitous. And most importantly, I think that there are a few bands now that are doing these box sets, Grateful Dead, Dylan being a couple of examples. But our back catalogue was quite underserved in terms of releases. That we were a prime candidate for it. I was really, I was grateful that we managed to pull it off, and very happy to see it, come to fruition, so to speak.
And you mentioned your book that came out not too long ago, and then obviously digging into the archives. You spent a little bit of time having to kind of spend time with your history. Did that have any kind of effect on you in terms of revisiting all of this stuff from your past? And did you pull anything out from that?
Well, as you said, rock music is sort of a in-the-moment thing, and who would have thought almost 50 years ago that I would be, adding archivist and an author to my list of musical achievements,
right.
if you want to say that. I think it helped me put the career in perspective, and I realized that you can't have ups in a career without any downs, and I became more reconciled with the moments in the career that were, let's not say they were downers, but they weren't as successful as some others, and it made me put the whole thing in perspective, which I think was beneficial on a purely personal level. I decided not to keep beating myself up if there was an album that perhaps wasn't as successful as another album, and and I realized that it was just really quite a colourful career and quite a story that needed to be told.
And not to discount the band now, in the most recent years, you've got such an exceptional group of players with you, and what you guys do is just spellbinding to watch the play between the guitars, and that's a sound that your group kind of innovated. Tell me a little bit about the sound of the two guitars and how that's kind of evolved over the years as the band has kind of evolved.
Well, I think one of the reasons for the longevity of the band is that we laid down a really strong blueprint, the twin lead guitar sound. And it's quite, it's my job really to make sure that ethos is kept intact. And it's, that style has flowed through all of our music. And, we still thrive on it. Unlike a lot of bands that have been around a long time, we're still producing albums and live DVDs and all kinds of things. We're very much a work in progress. So, the fact that that we're an older band, we're not acting as a tribute to ourselves. We're continually being creative. That's the most important thing. But the fortunate thing is having this very strong style, which we draw on when we write, when we produce albums. We're drawing on it just the way the fans are when they're going through the archives and they're listening to that style. And we're continually referencing the past. We're not aping the past, but we're referencing it, and we have our own deep catalog now to influence us, which is quite incredible, actually. You can pull a track out, that might be 25 years old, that might be a deep track that you don't listen to very often, or you don't play on stage, and it can be a little gem there that just sparks a thought in yourself. So that's very bizarre, to be influenced by your own catalog,
right.
or to be inspired by it, really. And I think, getting back to your previous question, that's part of what I learned by going through the archives and assessing the material and thinking to myself. There were points when I was listening to some of these old recordings, and it was as if I was listening to a fresh artist or a band that wasn't our band, because it's been so long that I've visited that material. So that's been one of the bizarre experiences of it.
Being such a prolific band, I would imagine that you would record and maybe tour on that album, but then, a couple years down the road, you kind of forget about some of those tracks, maybe, because you're focused on other things. How do you divide your time with the heavy touring? When do you write, and what's that process like for you?
Well, that's a good question. We take our touring medicine in the heat. That's the way I put it in a way. We get really busy in the fall, through the winter, the dark months. We ease up around about this time of the year, March, April, and then the summer is really wide open. We may play some musical festivals, which we are doing this year, but they're sporadic events. But the touring grind, shall we say, it goes from October through April, and so if you want to catch the band somewhere on the planet, that's when we'll be touring. So it's a nice balance actually, because in the summer you've got time to just evaluate what you've just done, and you've got time to reassess and to be creative. It's not always easy to be creative on the road because there's just so much travel. People think, back in the day we probably traveled in a more, let's say, easy way. Now our tours are very tightly scheduled, and so there's not a lot of downtime on a tour. But certainly in the summer, that's when it's when the creative juices flow.
I mean, I'm sure everybody asks you this when they look at your tour schedule and they see you're playing so many consecutive dates. Is there a secret to kind of staying, mentally focused and not being exhausted all the time? I would be tired.
Absolutely.
What's the secret?
Yeah, well, you do get physically tired, but the trick, as far as I'm personally concerned, is to be in the moment, and not to dwell too much on. In fact, I rarely. If you say to me while I'm on tour, "Where did you play two days ago?" I actually don't know. I want to know where I am right now and what's going on tonight. And same thing. I'm not thinking too far ahead in the future, and that's how I keep it for myself. That's how I keep it fresh. Sometimes makes me seem or appear kind of vague, because it's like a little trick I play on myself. I keep myself in the moment, and then you've got to enjoy travel, and you've got to make the travel interesting. So, if we can have some downtime during the tour, or stop somewhere and smell the roses, just all of the guys in the band are interested in where we're going. They'll make little excursions to go and see some local site, or perhaps even a museum or some natural phenomenon or whatever en route, and that keeps the whole thing interesting, And so all of those things are important, but that all goes hand in glove with being in the moment, Perhaps early on in my career, I probably spent a little bit too much time being holed up in hotel rooms, and I've come to value the travel experience. And I often say to younger musicians, if you don't enjoy travel, then maybe the life of a musician is not for you. So there are all those little tricks,
And you're going to be in the Bay Area for a couple of these shows. Obviously, you're going to be in Redwood City and then in Oakland. Are you going to have a chance to go out and sightsee for a couple of hours before you have to sound check?
We've certainly been up to see the. I don't know. Is Redwood City near the giant redwoods?
Redwood City, south of the city. So you're going to be kind of very close to San Francisco City. So it's basically
That's
the other
true.
side. So you're right there.
Yeah, right. Certainly, I've been to San Francisco many times, and but some of the guys maybe haven't been as many times as me, and they'll want to take a walk around town. Maybe go down to Fisherman's Wharf. We might have time to do that. We're big on the culinary experience, so we're always looking for interesting places to eat. We'll do things like we'll drop into a Whole Foods, and so I mean that also is a partial answer to your question there about you have to keep healthy and fit on the road. So we're always mindful of that. We like good food, good cuisine, and so all of that comes into the experience. But yeah, for sure there'll be some sights and so forth that we'll see on the way.
I wanted to comment on your technique. Now, you played a lot of the Flying V style guitars, but what I noticed with your technique is that you incorporate the tremolo bar in a lot of your playing.
I do.
Can you tell me a little bit of how, I mean, does that derive from your, getting into music and listening to bands like The Shadows and surf music? Where does that come from? How did you incorporate that into your style?
Well, yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, when I first started playing, I was about 11, 12, and the big inspiration was, really the bands like The Shadows and The Ventures, and using a whammy bar, tremolo bar, on a guitar was quite normal, and it's a leftover from that, and So I always have guitars that had that feature. I'm not excessive with it, but I'm more of an old, my roots are in older rock and roll style guitar playing, with a bit of blues thrown in and some folk, and yeah, so I'm quite okay, using the whammy bar, but I use it in a way that you probably sometimes you would think I'm doing it fingers, which I am. In addition, I'm using the fingers. It's all just part of my style. So I just pull all my influences into my current style of playing. So that involves picking, strumming, every technique that I've picked up in through the years, I use stylistically in the band.
It's a beautiful style. I mean, the music that you guys have created over the years, it's so amazing that you can combine so many different sounds and different, pulling from all of these different places.
That's right. We're really mindful of that with the guitar sounds. I mean, we have two guitar players, so the range of textures and so forth that we can bring to a live performance, we want to be able to use it all. Acoustic guitars, different stylistic approaches, a twin lead thing. It's all really in lieu of bringing in a keyboard player.
Right.
It's easily achieved with a keyboard player. You get textures and you can create a soundscape, but we choose the more difficult route. We use the guitars, and so we're using every trick in the book. Distortion, we use clean sounds, we're using effects and delays. Everything goes into the mix, and it keeps the music, the individual songs in a set. It keeps it varied for the audience, because you want to continually, by use of dynamics, musical dynamics and arrangements, you want to keep their interest there on every song. That's what we're very mindful of. Getting back to your earlier question, when we construct a set list for a show, we want to keep it, have a high point, a low point, a crescendo to the whole thing. And, it's all part of the mix.
It's creating a structure for the audience to kind of follow along. I think the music is just fantastic, and obviously you've done so much. I had to ask, obviously you've played with a lot of guys over the years while you've been doing the band, and there's one story I have to ask. You probably get asked a ton of times, but you did a session back in the day, I don't know when it was, but with George and Ringo of the Beatles and Seal of Black. Can you tell me a little bit about that story? Give me a little background on that.
Well, I did a couple of things with those guys, but that one in particular was a session that George Harrison was producing, and he had Ringo playing drums, and Klaus Voormann was on bass, and we were recording at the Apple Studios, and so actually George was really more directing the proceedings, but he would come out and show us little things on the guitar, and I was playing acoustic guitar in that session. And it was just awesome to meet both those guys. And the first thing that struck me about both of them was just how I'm a fairly small guy. These guys are really short, very small, and so you always think that your heroes are larger than life.
Right.
It's often quite bizarre when you meet them, because you realize they're like human-sized, or in their case even smaller.
Right.
So that was one thing, but to just be in the control room, analyzing and talking about some music we just laid down was extraordinary, because you're there, on almost an equal footing, talking as a fellow musician with Ringo. Do you think the groove was right on that, Ringo? Did you think and he's going, he's speaking to the guitar players in reverential terms,
right?
As if he's admiring us. And I'm like, but my goodness, you're a Beatle. That was quite bizarre, but fantastic at the same. Very, very humble guys, very normal, and that was also slightly disconcerting. You expect sometimes stars to have egos, but they didn't display them on that occasion at any rate.
Incredible story. I mean, you've lived such an incredible life pursuing this group and continuing to do it day after day, night after night. And I'm excited because you're going to be playing at Yoshi's in Oakland coming this Wednesday. And Yoshi's is really one of my favorite venues in all of the Bay.
Good venue, yeah.
It's a great venue, and it's going to be a great place, great sound to listen to you guys. And I want to also wish you the best for this year, for the 50th anniversary. And I want you to be safe out there because, you're doing a lot of shows.
Yep, well, safety is a paramount thing for us. We travel carefully and thoughtfully. And, well, thank you for those sentiments. And we'll bear it in mind. And, we're nearly at the end of a really long run, which is, 8 or 9 countries that we've visited in the last few months. So, when we get to Yoshi's Sacramento, that'll be the end of the line for this current tour. Then we get to drive home and then do it all over again. It's been absolutely wonderful. And, one of the key things is keeping healthy, as you mentioned, been no problem on this tour. So, we're all feeling really good about it. And I have to say the band's playing better than ever.
From what I've seen online from the most recent shows, you guys are just blowing minds. I was going to ask you real quick before you go. One last question. You guys do you sign records after the show. You go
We're
meet.
big on the meet and greet. Yeah,
right.
We certainly are. We value our fan community more than anything.
Has there ever been a time where you meet a fan, and someone says something that kind of blows your mind, that you're left a little speechless? Has that happened to you recently?
Oh yeah, I mean it happens often. I mean, we frequently get people who come and say, "The last show I saw of yours was 44 years ago." That's pretty bizarre. And I just usually say, "Well, you need to get out more often if they come up with that line."
Right.
But we've had some very poignant moments where people have they're either recovering from serious illnesses or they may be terminal. You get people like that coming along and they've got or they bring their parents along or vice versa. We're introduced to somebody's son or daughter and it's their first experience. There's many different experiences that we get from fans, and we also have this kind of street team of people all around the world that help us along our way.
Right.
Whether it's doing favors for us on the way, picking up packages, even themselves. The fan community arranges shows for us, and so it's a really benevolent kind of group of people that really follow us. They follow us online. They'll see where we're going, and they also support us at the show. So.
Right.
We could not do it without that and without them. And so we really do honor our fans and we work with them closely. Sometimes you meet a person once in a while who just really doesn't understand the protocol and could be a little awkward or goofy and they demand too much of your time.
Right.
And you have to gently say, hey, we're going to talk to this next group of people here. We've given you 10 minutes, but we're really pretty patient with people, and we recognize that the fan community is a part of the journey as much as we are ourselves. We're really big on doing fan conventions as well. So we've had them on cruise ships, we've had them in different countries, and so that's all part of being a follower of Wishbone Ash for the fans.
And not to mention how many lives you've touched over the years with your music. I mean,
I mean, that's the humbling part about it, is that you cannot fail to be touched by that when you make music and you realize, I mean, I'm a fan of bands too. The music that I enjoy of different bands has been the backdrop to my life. So I absolutely, and I think the guys in the band all absolutely understand that, musical references and musical memories that's what form the backdrop to your life and what triggers those memories. So we're very mindful of that. It's a great privilege to make music. You have to understand.
I got to say, congratulations on the 50th anniversary. And we again, look forward to seeing you guys when you guys come to Oakland. And, Andy, give my best to the band. And, hopefully I won't chat your ear off on Wednesday.
No. Well, we've had that chat.
Yeah, right.
But thank you, Eddie. Great pleasure to talk to you, and I'll certainly pass on your best wishes to the band.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Take care, Andy.
Take care. See you soon. Bye.
All righty. Bye-bye. Andy Powell, Wishbone Ash.